I was 27, living in the right half of a small duplex outside Asheville, and spending my Saturday morning fixing the loose bottom step on my porch. I restore old houses for a living, which means I usually know what to do when something is crooked, cracked, warped, or making a noise it shouldn't. People are less cooperative. The step had been loose for about 3 weeks. I could have fixed it in 20 minutes. Instead, I kept telling myself I needed the right screws, better weather, more coffee, or some other excuse that made sense only because nobody challenged it. Then Sabrina moved into the left half of the duplex. By that Saturday, she had lived next door for almost a month. In that time, she had introduced me to Agnes, her bicycle, Walter, her largest houseplant, Bernard, her unreliable printer, and Mr. Pickles, an imaginary cat who apparently judged my porch maintenance. She also kept making comments about the step. So I finally got my tools out. I was in old jeans, a faded gray t-shirt, and one sock because I had spilled coffee on the other one. I had just pulled the damaged board loose when her door opened. Sabrina stepped onto her porch carrying a yellow towel, a paperback, a bottle of sunscreen, and sunglasses large enough to hide half her face. Write in the comments, when you relax outside, what do you usually bring? A book, sunglasses, sunscreen, or a cold drink? She had on an open white linen shirt over a red swimsuit. Nothing about it was inappropriate. It was just extremely difficult to ignore when you had been living like a monk with a tool belt. She looked at the pry bar in my hand. Well, she said, the peacock has begun his display. I glanced behind me. What peacock? You. Loud tools. Rolled sleeves. Public construction project. This is public safety. Of course. I'm preventing the mail carrier from disappearing through the stairs. She nodded seriously. A hero. Then she walked down into the yard and spread the yellow towel across the sunny patch directly across from my porch. There were other sunny patches. I noticed that and immediately decided not to notice it. For the next 10 minutes, I accomplished almost nothing. I measured the same board 3 times, checked the level twice, and sanded one corner that had never caused a problem. Sabrina opened her book. I looked at the board. She adjusted her sunglasses. I looked at the board harder. You know, she said without looking up, most carpenters only measure once. Bad carpenters. And excellent carpenters measure the same spot 4 times. I'm accounting for regional humidity. She lowered the book just enough to look over it. Is regional humidity also why you're wearing one sock? I looked down like I had forgotten. Laundry emergency. Tragic. She went back to reading, and I went back to turning a simple repair into a federal project. A few minutes later, she said my name. Not loudly, just enough to make me look over. She was sitting up now, holding the sunscreen bottle toward me. I have a neighbor request. That sounds dangerous. I can't reach the middle of my back. I stared at the bottle, then at her. Then, for some reason, at the loose porch board, as though it might offer legal advice. Sabrina's smile softened. You can say no, she said. Seriously, I can ask somebody else. The fact that she gave me a clean way out made it harder to take it. No, I said too quickly. I mean, no, you don't need to ask somebody else. I can help. She handed me the bottle. I walked down the porch steps carefully, which was ironic considering one of them was missing a board. Sabrina turned around and pulled her hair over one shoulder. I sat behind her on the edge of the towel. The sunscreen might be cold, I said. That sounds like a warning from a medical professional. I work with wood. Very reassuring. I put a small amount across the top of her shoulders and started spreading it carefully. She took a quick breath. I stopped at once. You okay? Sabrina looked back at me. Her expression had changed. The joke was gone. Yeah, she said. I'm okay. You sure? She nodded, but didn't turn away yet. It's just been a while since someone touched me like my comfort mattered more than finishing what they started. I didn't know what to say to that. Normally, when something emotional enters a conversation, my instincts tell me to become very interested in the nearest wall. But I stayed where I was. Tell me if you want me to stop, I said. I will. She turned forward again. I continued slowly, keeping everything simple and respectful. No excuses to let my hands wander. No joke to make the moment smaller. When I finished, I handed her the bottle and moved back. She looked over her shoulder. Are you always that careful when something matters? I opened my mouth, but her phone buzzed on the towel before I could answer. She checked the message. Her face tightened. Bad news. I asked. Complicated news. I waited. She stared at the screen for another second, then set the phone down. My friend Valerie is having a small engagement thing tonight at a wine bar downtown. That sounds mostly like good news. It was. My former boyfriend is going to be there. I knew there had been someone before. She had mentioned him once, briefly, then changed the subject so fast even I understood not to ask. Do you want to skip it? I said. No. Her answer came immediately. Then she sighed. Maybe. I don't know. She picked at the edge of the towel. Valerie says I shouldn't feel like I have to prove anything. She also said I should bring somebody I trust if walking in alone is going to make the whole night harder. That sounds reasonable. Julian has a way of getting me alone and making normal conversations feel like courtroom testimony. I sat on the grass beside the towel. You don't have to explain. I know. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she picked up the sunscreen bottle and rolled it between her palms. This is going to sound ridiculous. Most of our conversations involve an imaginary cat. The standard is flexible. That got a small laugh. Would you come with me? Tonight? Yes. As your neighbor? She hesitated. As my boyfriend. I raised an eyebrow. My temporary boyfriend, she added. Why does it have to be fake? The question came out before I could reconsider it. Sabrina went still. I could hear a lawnmower 2 houses down and somebody's dog barking near the road. Finally, she said. Because friendship looks negotiable to Julian. A clear relationship might make him less likely to corner me or correct everything I say. I'll go. Her shoulders lowered slightly. But I have one condition. She looked wary. What condition? I'm there to support you. I'm not threatening him. I'm not picking a fight. I'm not answering for you. And I'm not deciding when you need to be rescued. She studied me. And you're not going to act like you own me? No. Or treat holding my hand like payment? No. She nodded once. Okay. We may need a story, she said. About how we started dating. That part is easy. You stole my mail. You gave me the wrong envelope. You named my truck. It looked lonely. It is a vehicle. It has emotional depth. I laughed, and she smiled wider. Then she leaned closer. You may have to hold my hand tonight, she said, and act like you like me. Liking you will be the easiest part. The sentence landed between us before I could pull it back. Sabrina's smile faded, but not in a bad way. She looked down at the sunscreen bottle. That kind of convincing behavior can get difficult to separate from reality. I kept my eyes on her. Maybe that's not entirely a problem. For once, Sabrina had no immediate joke. She stood, gathered the towel and book, and headed toward her porch. At the steps, she turned around. 7 o'clock, she said. I'll be ready. She pointed at my foot. We're both socks. Then she disappeared inside, leaving me in the yard with a broken porch step, sunscreen on my hands, and 6 hours to figure out how to pretend I wasn't already in trouble. By 6:30, I had tried on every decent shirt I owned and rejected all of them for reasons that made less sense each time. One looked too formal. One made me look like I sold insurance. One had a stain near the cuff that I decided nobody would notice, then spent 5 minutes staring at. I finally chose a navy button-down and dark jeans. I cleaned my boots, fixed my hair twice, and stood in front of the bathroom mirror wondering when exactly I had become nervous about crossing 12 feet of shared porch. At 7, Sabrina's door opened. She stepped outside in a fitted green dress with small gold earrings and her hair loose around her shoulders. From across the yard, she looked completely confident. Up close, her fingers kept adjusting the strap of her purse. You're wearing both socks, she said. I take feedback seriously. Good. The shirt works too. High praise. She came closer and reached up to straighten my collar. Her hand was steady at first. Then I felt a small tremor in her fingers. I placed my hand over hers. You okay? She looked at me. There's still time to escape. I'm not trapped. I mean it. If this gets uncomfortable, you can leave. I'm glad you asked me. She held my gaze for another second, then leaned forward and kissed my cheek. It was quick, soft, and close enough to shut down every useful thought in my head. Practice, she said. We might need more. You'll have to earn it. She walked toward my truck before I could answer. The drive downtown took about 20 minutes. Sabrina spent most of it building our fake relationship history. According to her, we had fallen in love after I returned one of her packages. According to me, she had stolen 3 pieces of my mail and used Agnes the bicycle as an escape vehicle. She claimed my truck had encouraged the whole thing because it was lonely. I told her my truck did not support reckless decisions. She rested one hand on the center console and looked at me. Your truck is taking me to a party with a fake boyfriend. Fair point. By the time we parked, she was laughing. The laughter faded when we reached the wine bar. It sat on a busy downtown corner with tall windows, warm lights, and small groups gathered near the entrance. Through the glass, I could see Valerie moving between tables in a white jumpsuit, hugging people. Sabrina stopped on the sidewalk. I waited. She took my hand before we went inside. She had not seen Julian yet. That mattered to me more than I expected. Her fingers tightened around mine. Still okay? I asked. Ask me again in 5 minutes. Valerie spotted us as soon as we entered. She hugged Sabrina first, then looked at me with the expression of someone who already knew more than I had been told. You must be Dylan. I've been accused of that. Valerie smiled. Thank you for coming. Sabrina gave her a look. What? Valerie said. I'm being polite. You're inspecting him. I can do both. She leaned close to Sabrina and whispered something I could not hear. Sabrina's face warmed, and Valerie walked away looking pleased with herself. What did she say? I asked. Nothing useful. That usually means it was accurate. Before she could respond, a man approached from behind her. Julian looked exactly like the kind of person who always knew where to stand in a room. Clean jacket, easy smile, calm voice, nothing openly hostile. Sabrina, he said. Her hand shifted in mine. Julian. His eyes moved to me. They paused on my shirt, then my hands, where small cuts and old glue marks never fully disappeared. And you are? Dylan. He shook my hand. What do you do, Dylan? I restore old houses. Construction? Mostly repair work. Porches, windows, floors, stairs. Things people tried to fix badly before calling me. Sabrina made a small sound that might have been a laugh. Julian smiled like he had noticed it. How did you two meet? Sabrina glanced at me. She stole my mail? I said. I received one envelope by mistake. She refused to return it until I agreed to meet Agnes. Julian looked confused. My bicycle, Sabrina explained. She also named my truck. It looked emotionally neglected. That time she laughed for real. Julian watched her for half a second longer than necessary. Well, he said, this is unexpected. Sabrina's grip tightened once, then relaxed. It's new, she said. I can see that. His tone stayed pleasant, but the sentence felt like it had another meaning underneath it. Valerie called Sabrina over to meet someone from work. Sabrina looked at me. You coming? Only if you want me to. She considered that, then shook her head. I'll be fine. I let go of her hand. That seemed to surprise Julian more than anything else. For the next hour, I stayed close without following Sabrina around the room. She talked with Valerie, laughed with two women near the bar, and introduced me to people when she wanted to. Sometimes she reached for my hand. Sometimes she moved away on her own. Once, while we squeezed through a crowded space between tables, I kept my hand near the middle of her back without touching until she leaned slightly toward me. Then I guided her past a chair. Later, she rested her hand on my arm while telling Valerie the story about Bernard, the printer that apparently had creative differences with deadlines. At one point she laughed and leaned against my chest without thinking. I looked down. She looked up. Neither of us moved immediately. The fake part of the evening was becoming difficult to locate. You're convincing, she said quietly. So are you. That may be the problem. Still not sure it is. Valerie called everyone together for a quick photo, and the moment broke. A few minutes later, Sabrina asked for water. I offered to get it. When I returned, Julian was standing beside her near the end of the bar. I slowed down before reaching them. You used to hate public affection, he was saying. Sabrina's shoulders were tense, but her voice was steady. I hated affection being performed in public and criticized in private. Julian gave a patient smile. That isn't what happened. That's how I experienced it. You always did turn ordinary disagreements into something bigger. I stopped beside Sabrina and handed her the water. I did not look at Julian. I looked at her. You okay? The question changed something in her face. Not because I had arrived to take over. Because I had not. Yes, she said. I am. Then she turned back to Julian. I'm allowed to change my mind. I'm allowed to wear bright clothes. I'm allowed to be loud. I'm allowed to enjoy things you thought were embarrassing. Julian glanced around, checking whether anyone was listening. You're rewriting our entire relationship. Your memory has always protected you better than it protected me. His expression tightened. I'm only saying Dylan may not understand what he's getting involved with. Sabrina took one slow breath. He listens. Julian looked at me then, as if waiting for a reaction. I gave him none. Sabrina continued. I'm not having private conversations with you anymore. I don't need your agreement about what happened, and I'm not going to keep explaining my boundaries until you approve them. For the first time, Julian had no smooth answer ready. He nodded once, like he was ending a business meeting, then walked away. Sabrina stayed still until he disappeared into the crowd. Then she put the glass down. I need air. I followed her through a side door onto the back patio. The moment we were outside, she covered her face with both hands. Her breathing turned uneven. I stayed near her, close enough to help, far enough not to assume. After a few seconds, she looked at me through her fingers. Why aren't you hugging me? I want to. Then why aren't you? I was waiting to know if you wanted it. She dropped her hands. I do. I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around her. She held on tightly, her forehead against my chest. That was harder than I thought, she said. You handled it. You were there. Beside you. You did the rest. She leaned back enough to look at me. I don't want our first real kiss to happen because we're pretending. My heart started beating harder. I don't want to pretend anymore. She searched my face, gave the smallest nod, and closed the distance between us. The kiss was gentle and brief at first. Then she stayed close, one hand resting against my shirt, and kissed me again like she had made a decision. When we pulled apart, she smiled. That was not practice. No. Good. We went back inside together. This time, Sabrina did not hold on to me for protection. She crossed the room alone, spoke to Valerie, and joined a group near the windows. During Valerie's toast, we sat beside each other at a small table. Nobody was looking at us. Under the table, Sabrina reached over and took my hand. After Valerie's toast, Sabrina kept holding my hand under the table. Above the table, she was smiling at Valerie, listening to people tell engagement stories, and pretending nothing important had changed. Below it, her thumb moved slowly across my knuckles. That small hidden gesture felt more honest than anything we had done for the room. We left a little after 10. Outside, the downtown air had cooled, and the sidewalks were still crowded. Sabrina walked beside me, without speaking, until we reached my truck. Then she stopped near the passenger door. So, she said. So, we should probably discuss the fact that our fake relationship lasted about 3 hours. Strong beginning. Poor long-term planning. She smiled, but she looked nervous again. I like you. There was no joke attached to it. I like you too. How much? Enough that I'm planning to ask you on a real date tomorrow. Why tomorrow? I thought I'd give you time. Ask me now. I leaned against the truck. Sabrina, would you go on a real date with me? Yes. You answered before I finished. I understood the general direction. She stepped closer and kissed me again. This one was warmer than the kiss on the patio. Still gentle. Still easy. But there was no audience, no Julian, and no reason to prove anything. Just us standing beside an old work truck while two people argued about parking across the street. On the drive home, Sabrina placed her hand in mine on the center console. I drove carefully, even though the road was familiar. When we reached the duplex, I parked in my usual spot, got out, and walked around to open her door. She looked toward her porch, which was about 15 feet away. Thank you for driving me home. Safety first. A difficult journey. We nearly had to cross the entire driveway. I walked her to her door anyway. Under the porch light, she turned to face me. I should tell you something before tomorrow. That sounds serious. It is, a little. I waited. She looked down at our hands. I'm afraid of wanting a real relationship. I understood that better than I wanted to admit. I'm afraid too. She looked up. My last girlfriend said I was dependable until feelings got complicated. Then I became impossible to reach. Sabrina did not rush to reassure me. That helped. Was she wrong? She asked. No. Do you want to do something different this time? Yes. Then when you feel yourself disappearing, say it out loud. Even if all you can say is that you're shutting down. I nodded. And when you turn everything into a joke because you're scared, I said, tell me that too. She narrowed her eyes. You noticed that? I restore old houses. I notice when someone keeps painting over the same crack. That was almost poetic. Don't tell anyone. She squeezed my hand. So we don't expect each other to interpret silence correctly. Agreed. She kissed my cheek, then went inside. The next evening, I knocked on her door carrying flowers and a small paper bag. The flowers came from a woman whose porch railing I had repaired. She had offered cash. I had negotiated for a bundle of summer flowers instead. Sabrina opened the door wearing a yellow top and jeans. Her eyes went straight to the flowers. Did you steal those? I traded labor for them legally. That sounds like something a person says after stealing flowers. I handed them over. Then I gave her the paper bag. What's this? A bad idea made from walnut. She opened it and pulled out a small wooden dragon. It was rougher than I wanted. The wings were uneven, and one eye looked slightly more worried than the other. Sabrina stared at it. It's Gerald. You mentioned him at the party. The dragon who's afraid of fire. You remembered his name. I remember things. Her expression changed so quickly that I thought I had done something wrong. Then she hugged me. Not casually. She pressed her face against my shoulder and held on. Thank you, she said. I rested one hand lightly against her back. You're welcome. Our date was simple. We got tacos from a food truck and ate them at a picnic table. After that, we walked beside the French Broad River, where the path stayed busy enough to feel comfortable but quiet enough to talk. On the pedestrian bridge, Sabrina leaned against the rail. What did you want to be when you were a kid? She asked. A lighthouse keeper. She turned toward me. In North Carolina? I had not researched the position. Why a lighthouse keeper? I thought being alone meant being peaceful. That is the most Dylan answer possible. What about you? I wanted to rescue injured mermaids. From what? Mostly poor decisions. And how did you plan to transport them? Large wagon. We laughed, then stood watching the water for a while. Sabrina's voice changed when she spoke again. Julian never told me to become smaller. I looked at her. Not directly. That would have been easier to notice. She traced one finger along the bridge rail. It happened slowly. He made a face when I laughed too loudly. He said bright clothes made people take me less seriously. If I showed him unfinished drawings, he found everything wrong with them. I stayed quiet. I started dressing differently, she continued. I stopped sharing ideas until they were perfect. I apologized before saying I was hurt. Eventually, I couldn't tell whether I was reacting normally or creating trouble. The way he spoke to you last night wasn't normal. I know that now. She looked at me. When you said liking me would be easy, it scared me. Why? Because I wanted to believe you. I moved closer but did not touch her. You're allowed to want kind things. She blinked hard, then smiled. I like who I am around you. I looked down at the river. I like who I am around you too. What does that mean? It means I'm trying not to hide every time something matters. She reached for my hand. I kissed her there on the bridge. When we returned to the duplex, Sabrina stood between our porches holding the wooden dragon. I want to move slowly, she said. We can. I'm still going to use the sunny patch in front of your porch. I assumed that was part of the lease. It is now. Her phone buzzed. She checked the screen, and the warmth disappeared from her face. What happened? I asked. She turned the phone toward me. The message was from Julian. He called the party a performance. He said I would leave once I learned the full truth about her. Sabrina locked the screen. There are things I haven't told you. You don't have to tell me tonight. She looked at me for several seconds. Yes, she said quietly. I do. Sabrina unlocked her phone again, but she did not open Julian's message. Instead, she sat on the edge of her porch. I sat beside her, leaving enough space that she could decide whether to close it. For a long time, she said. I thought I had to explain him by starting with what he never did. I waited. He never hit me. He never screamed in my face. He never showed up at my door making a scene. She looked at the dark yard. So people hear that and think maybe it wasn't that bad. I don't. Her eyes moved to me. He saved things, she said. Messages I sent when I was upset. Voice notes when I was crying. Screenshots from arguments where I sounded confused. For what? To prove I was the problem. Her fingers tightened around the phone. After we broke up, he started talking about those moments like they showed my real personality. Not what had happened before them. Not what he had said. Just the worst part of my reaction. She gave a small, embarrassed laugh. I'm afraid you'll hear something one day and believe him. I turned toward her. I'm not judging your whole character by the worst 5 minutes of your life. You don't know how bad I sounded. You don't have to sound calm while somebody is hurting you for the hurt to count. Her eyes filled, and she looked away. I don't need you to cry nicely, I said. I don't need you to explain everything perfectly. I want to know you as you are. She stayed quiet. Normally, that was where I would have stopped. I would have assumed the important part had been understood and hidden inside the silence. But we had made a rule. So I said the part that scared me. I think I'm falling in love with you. Sabrina looked back at me. I could hear insects in the grass and an old air conditioner running somewhere behind the duplex. You're sure? She asked. No. I'm terrified. That made her laugh through the tears. Good answer. It's the honest one. She moved closer and rested her forehead against mine. I'm falling for you too. Then she opened Julian's contact, blocked the number, and placed the phone face down. I did not tell her to do it. That was important. I'm tired of letting him into rooms where he isn't even standing, she said. The next morning, she called Valerie. Valerie listened, told Sabrina she supported the boundary, and later refused when Julian tried to pass along another message through her. That was the end of his direct place in our lives. Not because he apologized. Not because he suddenly understood. Because Sabrina stopped giving him access. After that, our relationship grew through ordinary things. She showed me her studio, where every flat surface held paper, pencils, paint, and half-finished creatures with worried expressions. A dragon hid behind a child holding a flashlight. A mermaid sat at the edge of shallow water while another character waited beside her. A monster stood outside a dark bedroom door. You draw a lot of scared creatures, I said. I like giving them someone who waits without forcing. I understood more than she explained. A few weeks later, I built her a bookshelf. She claimed it leaned left. It did not. She put a tiny paper sign on it that said Bernard's Emotional Support Furniture. Our lives began overlapping without either of us planning it. Her drawings appeared on my refrigerator. My screwdriver set appeared in her kitchen. We bought groceries together and argued about cereal. Some evenings, she worked on illustrations at my table while I repaired old window hardware. We kept both halves of the duplex. That helped. We could choose closeness without turning it into dependence. We also developed a language for the moments when old habits returned. When I got quiet, Sabrina would ask, "Lighthouse report?" Then I had to answer honestly. Sometimes I needed time. Sometimes reassurance. Sometimes ordinary silence with her nearby. When Sabrina made too many jokes too quickly, I asked, "Dragon or mermaid?" Dragon meant space. Mermaid meant she wanted to be held. Both meant stay close and do not demand answers. It sounded ridiculous. It worked. The next spring, I came outside and found the yellow towel in the grass again. Sabrina was wearing a blue swimsuit and holding up the same sunscreen bottle. "I still can't reach my back," she said. "That condition appears chronic." I sat behind her. Before touching her, I paused. She looked over her shoulder. The question did not need words anymore, but it was still there. "Yes," she said. That moment felt completely different from the first one. Not less charged, just safer. Several months later, we removed one small section of the low rail between our porches. I built a wider shared step, but left both front doors exactly where they were. Our older neighbor walked past, studied it, and called the project structural flirting. Sabrina said that was the official architectural term. A year after Valerie's party, Sabrina published a new book. At the launch, I stood near the back while she signed copies and answered questions about anxious dragons. When I opened the book, the dedication said, "For Dylan," who listened. Below it was a small drawing of Gerald holding a carpenter's hammer. Sabrina found me staring at the page. "You okay?" she asked. "Sawdust. We are indoors. Traveling sawdust." She kissed me in front of everyone. The kiss was not a message to Julian. It was not a performance. It was simply affection she no longer felt the need to reduce. That evening, we sat between the two connected porches while the sun dropped behind the trees. The wooden dragon rested on the shared windowsill. Sabrina leaned against me, and I put my arm around her. Neither of us was fixed. That was never the goal. We had simply learned to ask, answer, wait, speak, and try again. Sabrina noticed the sunscreen bottle beside her chair. She picked it up and gave me the same teasing smile she had worn the first morning. "One porch has been permanently corrupted," I said. "It needed improvement." I stood and walked toward her.